What's going on, guys? In today's tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to create this mood lamp texture within Blender. Now if you're on Patreon you would have got this tutorial first and you'd have the project files in order to get this material. Otherwise guys, just follow along and I'll show you how to create the tutorial from scratch. Let's get started. First things first, you're going to need two things. If your Blender doesn't look like this, head to the description below and download my startup file for free and you'll get the same startup as me. And two, you're going to need Node Wrangler enabled. If you have it enabled, that's fine. Skip to this point in the video. If you don't have Node Wrangler enabled, this is how you enable Node Wrangler. Go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and then search for Node Wrangler and make sure it's enabled. Once that's done, let's get started. Okay, so first things first, what we're going to do is go to the render properties and change it from cycles to Eevee. So go down to the right hand side here, click this icon and select Eevee. This is so we can see the effect happen in real time. Then what we're going to need to do is go to the top and navigate to Insta Shade. And this is so we can see the shader editor and the camera viewport at the exact same time. On the camera viewport on the right hand side, press Z and swap to rendered view. And now we can see the Eevee mode. Then we're going to select this world tab here and change it to object mode. Now we're going to get rid of default cube. So by default cube, select the default cube, press X, delete, press Shift A to get a new mesh, and we're going to select a cylinder. Press S to scale it up and Z to scale it on the Z axis, and we're going to move it up ever so slightly, like so. Then we're going to right click and press Shade Smooth. Okay, now it's time to create the material. So on the left hand side here is the shader editor. Press the new material and we're just going to rename this Mood Lamp Material. Perfect. Now we're going to start to add the components to get the material started. So press Shift and A and search for a bump node. Plug this bump node into the normal of your principled shader and then select the bump node and press Ctrl T. Now this is why we needed Node Wrangler, because it's automatically going to set up a texture coordinate and a mapping node for you. We don't actually need this image texture, so select this, press X to delete, and we're going to replace it with a Musgrave texture. So press Shift A, search for Musgrave, plug the vector of the mapping into the vector of the Musgrave and the factor of the Musgrave into the height of the bump. Now there's one more node we need, and that's a color ramp. So press Shift A and search one more time and search for color ramp. And we're going to place the color ramp in between the Musgrave and the bump node. Perfect. Now on the color ramp, we're going to change it from linear into B-spline, and we're going to select this N value and make it somewhere around gray. That should be enough. Lastly, grab this N value and move it ever so slightly, and it's just going to make our effect pop out a bit more. So do it to taste. I like it to about here. This works fine for me. And it's time to adjust some of the values to make it pop out ever so slightly. So we don't need to change any values of the bump, but for the Musgrave texture we need to change all of the values. So change the scale to 4.7, change the detail to 16, dimensions to 6.4, and the last value to 1.1. Perfect. This works fine. Now I want this to pop out a bit more, so I'm going to start changing the principled shaders value. So I'm going to change the color to a bluish color. That works fine for me. I'm going to reduce the roughness all the way down, put the metallic up ever so slightly, and this is looking good. But the lighting looks a little bit off for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a HDRI from hdrihaven.com. Or if you wanted to add a studio within my startup file, which you should have downloaded from Gumroad, you can just click the top right corner here within the scene collections and enable the studio, because I've already set up a studio. But for me, I'm going to use a HDRI, so I'm going to disable that. I'm going to go to the shader editor here, go from object to world, and I already have a HDRI set up within a startup file, the HDRI nodes. So you just need to connect this to background and environment texture, open up your own HDRI. So I'm going to load that now. Okay, so I've loaded up my HDRI just so I can have better lighting, and this works fine. I'm going to adjust the mapping rotation on the Z axis to move it left and right, get it to a place that I like. This works fine for me. Then I'm going to go back from world to object so I can see my material. And I'm just going to adjust the settings a little bit more to my liking. Maybe put the transmission up. Yeah, that looks cool. That looks cool to me. Now, lastly, to get the effect, we need to animate the movement, which is why we needed the mapping node. So essentially, go down to your timeline or your dope sheet, scrub it to 0, hover over rotation on the Z axis of your mapping node, and press I. This will automatically set a keyframe, as you can see at the bottom here. Now go all the way to the end of your timeline, go back to the rotation Z axis and type in a value. I'm going to type in 170 because that should be enough for this, and then press I again, and that will enable another keyframe. And as you can see, it set up a keyframe from 0 to the end of your timeline. If we go back to 0 and press spacebar, you should see that we start to have the effect, which is looking but as you can see, it eases in and it eases out, and that's not what we want. We want it to be a bit more consistent. So go back down to your timeline or dope sheet and press V and change the handle type to vector. Now this is going to make it more consistent. It's not going to ease in and it's not going to ease out. It's just going to keep going. And that's exactly the effect that we want. Just like that, we have a mood lamp texture. Now this works not only in Eevee, but it works for cycles also. So if you want to change it from Eevee to cycles, bang, you can see it right there. I'm going to leave it in Eevee for real time at the moment. And once you have this material set up, you can use any mesh. So if we delete this, or we add in, say, a cube, all we need to do is select this material and select mood lamp material, the material we just created, and bang, just like that, we have it. We can use another mesh if you wanted to use Susanna Monkey. Select it, select the material here, mood lamp, bang. Gonna right click shade smooth, we have it again. If we wanted to use a torus, select the torus, go to materials, mood lamp material, just like that. And it's really, you can do some really creative things with this. It doesn't have to be blue. You can change the color to whatever you want. You can adjust the roughness. You can bring the roughness up, metallic down, put the transmission away. You don't even need to use a principled shader. You can use a glass shader if you're in cycles. And we have this effect. Again, it's not going to run in real time because cycles. But you can literally go as crazy as you want with this effect and it will look pretty good. Anyway guys, let me know in the comments if you like this tutorial, if you found it useful, if you're going to be using this. I'd love to see some of your work. If there's anything else you'd like me to cover, then let me know and I'll make a tutorial on it. Peace.